welcome. We're about to get started. It is the time.
Okay, let's go.
Alright, so I am by Hart, they are M Eifler. We both work at Microsoft in the office of the CTO with Jaron Lanier. And today we're going to be talking about data dignity. So I guess a lot of you have read Radical Markets. And so Jaron Lanier and his previous work on data dignity was also a big inspiration for the chapter, I forget what it's called, in Radical Markets, but the chapter on data dignity in Radical Markets. So Jaron is a common source here. So we all know the current state of things. Everyone kind of exists here. All their data gets hoovered up by some large servers, such as Facebook. And so there's like this tiny market for buying and selling data, but it's not very efficient. And there's basically no economic actions that most individuals can take around their data, including the action of maybe deciding not to sell their data. And so we want to propose some alternatives and look at 4 different hypothetical people in future markets participating and doing economic actions around their data.
So okay, we're gonna start with an 8-year-old because they're the best new users of technology. So this is Mo. It's Mo's birthday. Mo's really wants a phone for their birthday. So Mo's parent is like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I can give you a phone. I know that people are like tracking people with their phones and stuff. It's kind of scary. I don't know if people want people doing that with my kids. So Mo goes to their friend and it's like, hey, what am I supposed to do? And their friend is like, have you heard of this thing called KidsMid? I gave my kid a phone with this app on it. What the heck is KidsMid? So now I'm gonna go into my KidsMid acting voice. Hello and welcome to KidsMid. We here at KidsMid are excited to collaborate with parents all around the world to create the best data set on modern childhood while keeping your little ones safe from data sneaks and advertisers alike. So KidsMid is basically this company / app that where people get to join a data union. There's lots of words for this. It can be called a mid, it can be called a collaborative or a cooperative. There's a bunch of ways to think about all of us in this room all joining the data dignity talk mid and collaborating and collecting our data. So KidsMid, there's seats up here in the front. KidsMid does this just for little kids' phones. So we're gonna see over here, this is how we are convincing the parent to put this app on their kid's phone. So this is our intention. We will scrub out all of this information while collecting and buying from you this information. And we know that there are some legal techniques that people are using to de-anonymize data, no matter how well we scrub it, but that's why we have things like GDPR. Thank you, Europe, and now where I live, California. So we have good intentions, but the reality is that there are still some illegal things that happen around data. And despite the fact that now in this imaginary future data has, as Bertune Anderson mentioned earlier today, property rights. You can't steal it from someone if it's in a market because it has an economic value. I love my PowerPoint animations, I'm very proud of them. So if we go into the menu here, we'll notice that you can view your kid's data, so everything that you've chosen to collect on your kid will be shown here, and you can see it at any time. But then also, you can choose, so we'll see here that I've chosen, or Mo's parent, not me, has chosen screen time, location, mood, and playtime, as well as submitted DNA sample. And the reason that this happened is because they really wanted to participate in this UCSF Children's Hospital, and they will only buy data in this set. If you want to sell less than this, they won't buy your data, but they will buy it from someone else. They've also chosen here to sell to Lego. Lego is slightly different though. They're happy to buy this set, but if you will also include your kids' content watching data, they will pay you more a month to include it in that set, but you don't like Amazon, so you just decided Amazon doesn't get my kids' data no matter what they want to sell it for or buy it for. So you have rights over who is using your data and for what. So what kind of things you want to participate in, what kind of things you don't. Some of these can be judgments about what you're getting paid, and some of them can be judgments about sort of like a moral thing. But in conclusion, Mo gets a phone for their birthday. It's very exciting. And then the parent also is like, well, maybe I can find a way to sell my data too, which we go into the next human.
All right, so our next theoretical human is Chef Noms, no relation. And Chef Noms is a vlogger, live streamer, cooking hobbyist who has a web presence and a following online and wants to leverage that community and that presence to be able to sell their valuable data instead of just showing it online for free. So they're going to be participating in a project called Subot, which is a kitchen AI that's in development and needs data from people. And instead of just kind of taking this data passively, Chef Noms is going to be participating in the development and collection of this data and getting paid for her data. So we're imagining Subot is a system that uses camera data, and there's a smart microphone that are in various places and put together data on what's going on in the kitchen, such as one that points down at the stove and can see what things look like chopped up, can see how long things take to cook on the stove, stuff like that. And that data needs to come from somewhere, and Chef Noms wants to get paid for it. So Chef Noms might say, hey Subot, can we make buttermilk biscuits? And Subot will say, well, I can see you have flour and baking powder, but do you have buttermilk? And through this vocal interface, Subot can help people cook. But in this case, Chef Noms is going to be providing data. For example, this is the kind of debugging overlay of what the camera might see with object detection. And Subot might be pretty confident about the objects in yellow, but not confident about this mystery can here. And to get more confidence, Subot can say, I'm unfamiliar with this brand, can you show it to me? And so this is valuable data for this product, Subot. And so by showing the label of this can, Chef Noms should get paid for that little amount of data. And that can be seen as an investment. Because when you invest in the product, and Baratunde this morning also gave a very good example, when you're giving data to an AI and that AI gets integrated into a product, you're making that a better product. And maybe you should get a little bit of stock in that product. So some products are going to slowly increase in value, or maybe level off, or maybe your data decreases in value. So there's also kinds of data that have trends, and trends sometimes resurface and have these kind of peaks and exponential decay. So such as the rainbow cake trend, if people want to look up rainbow cakes, Chef Noms can provide that data. And so we want to imagine a future in which this is just common practice and all this data can add up to real income. So for how this might work, a little bit more technically, let's look at the space of all possible toasts. There's many kinds of toast. There's toast with jam on the jam spectrum, from yellowish jams to purplish jams. And an AI has this toast space model inside of it. And it has all these pictures. Each of these are real pictures of toast contributed by real people. And all those people have their names attached to their toast picture in this model. And they should have that data be valued by this toast recognizer. So Subot learns about toast space by creating borders around these human-labeled examples. Like, it's not magic, it's people's knowledge that's just being collected by this AI. And then this is kind of the abstract concept of toast space. When we say an AI learned about toast, we just mean it's this mathematical model. So it's not a perfect model. Subot might see this picture of toast and think it's toast with butter, and Chef Noms might say, no, that's actually toast with jam. And so how this might work is that that little star is the point where this piece of toast exists in toast space, and Subot thinks, oh, it's in the toast with butter section, but it's going to have to correct its model to say, oh, well, toast with butter is over here, but it's not where the star is, that's toast with jam. So we're going to update the model. Now we have a new model, and we could say that Chef Noms is now responsible or has ownership over this area, this triangle of toast space. And so there's all this toast real estate, and Chef Noms maybe has contributed data and has ownership of all these areas of toast space. And you can think of it as an investment. And many different peoples have invested in toast space. And the difference between toast space and traditional real estate is that you can't just buy up a huge swath of toast space and keep it forever and have a monopoly as more and more people make that land more valuable around you. Instead, maybe Chef Noms' triangle over here shrinks a little as someone finds an example that's actually toast with butter that's within that space. And so now all the land is more valuable. Even if your land shrinks, more people can get land that was near yours and kind of carve into that space, but it all raises in value, so everyone should benefit. at least up to the certain point where there's enough data collected, and that's what this value of data kind of represents. So once you collect enough data, okay, maybe more data isn't going to help make your model better, and so Subot knows to stop collecting, and that could be, well, maybe now we have enough data, right? This is a common misconception. Maybe we have enough data now, we understand everything, we don't need people anymore. But then, avocado toast happens. It's a trend, it's delicious, you can get some just down the street at the Avalon Cafe if you're hungry later. And so this is like this new thing that humans invented. And so now Subot is like, oh no, avocado toast exists and I don't know what it is. And so this is kind of the standard data worker type interface where you see a bunch of things, you have to click the avocado toast. The same way on the Google Maps example we saw earlier this afternoon.
Is this a vehicle?
Is this a vehicle? Is this a hill? Is this avocado toast? And so when you click on that avocado toast, you should get ownership of that little area of avocado toast space. You've invested in this product, you've made it better, and also the value of the model has increased. As Subot can recognize and understand more and more things, the value of that increases. So you're not all fighting over limited real estate. Avocado toast space is this new section. And so we want a model where everybody wins as more people participate. But then there might be even a new trend. This is a real trend. This happened. It wasn't very popular, but it's enough of a thing to be a thing. Enough of a thing that an AI wants to know about it, and that it's valuable to know about it in case maybe you're having a mermaid-themed party for a kid, or if you just like blue things. So mermaid toast, it exists over here. Maybe Chef Noms contribute some examples. And so the space of all possible toast grows. And it's not very popular, so you could think of it as a rural area. You have these big swaths of land that aren't maybe very valuable, but you have a lot of it, and whenever it's needed, it comes in handy. So there will always be new trends in toasts, like human culture is always changing. People are incredible in the kinds of toasts they can come up with. Yes?
This is really great. I really like the example. How do you ensure that people are being good actors?
Yeah, this is why economic actions and having money attached to data is so important, because now bad actors are committing fraud and they're stealing, and we have a legal structure that can deal with that. We don't have a legal structure that can deal with just, oh, they're just a troll, right? So we need to have money involved, unfortunately, sometimes, in order to have the law able to step in and punish those bad actors. So, great question. Oh, yes.
Yeah, great question. How do you deal when you're receiving money for data and you're starting and then it goes like that in value? Usually what happens is that the first adopters get a lot of money, and then the ones that come afterwards, they don't as much. So how are you thinking about solving that problem?
Yeah, and this is why I like to stress that the real estate thing is a metaphor, where when you get that big piece of investment, well, when you're a first investor, the model isn't very good yet. And so in a model where as people invest in making the space more valuable, they can carve into that kind of space that you have. So they're carving into your real estate in a way that should make up for you holding that much real estate, because they're making your real estate more valuable by taking part of it. And so both people should benefit. So it would take a little more math to math it out, but the structure is fundamentally different from real estate.
When it goes constant, do they keep getting royalties, everybody? Or
In this case,
when it's not
We
needed?
cover royalties a little bit more later on.
yeah, so we'll get a little bit to that, but basically it depends on how much the product is used. And so that's a good point, but we'll get more to that later. So the value of AI increases with human innovation. Humans are always innovating. As long as there are humans on this earth, there will always be new kinds of toast.
So we're gonna go through for a second an interface for how this might work. And we're calling this a cell interface because instead of there being sort of like hierarchical menus, different little organisms of projects have these little things slotted onto them, and you can always dive down into them. So it maintains data lineages, which is what we call it. So like if you make a piece of toast space, your connection to that, your ownership of that property never gets disassociated from it, no matter how much higher up the data is used in a project. So in this example, we're going to connect Jones, our musician, and Nugent, this is our avid listener, both with the music, the authored info, and the capital exchange for that music, but also collected information that the user sends back to the musician. So this is our band, and we're going to show how the band creates a music. So starting super simply, our guitarist is just going to go into our interface, start a new project, and contribute an already finished guitar track, and be able to share that with the band so that the band has rights to it, but also links back to the original creator of the MP4. So then once all the band members do this, they realize that they don't have any percussion, and it sounds real dumb. So Jones is going to go into our our platform and go into projects. And this is the project that the band has all been working on together. And I'll talk a little bit in a second about the financial components. But going into search for percussion pieces, and once those are added to the project, they automatically populate their royalty demands. So you can see here that this is an Creative Commons or open source drum sample that the original author didn't charge anything for, and so therefore there are no royalty demands here. But we can see here that this marimba generator has a royalty demand of a 5% overall rate. Or sorry, I don't know why I said 5%, but a percentage of the overall rate. And maybe we're like, well, that's way too much, I don't want to pay that much for a marimba generator. So you can go into the project and see, I've seen this algorithm before. This is a commonly used music generator algorithm on the platform. This interface I've also seen before. The new part to me is the Data Hillcrest Marimba Band. And if we click on that, we can see it connects. Did it go? Yeah. Okay, we can see that it connects all the way back to the author of the original data set, which is the Hillcrest Marimba Band. If you don't know about them, this is a real band in Zimbabwe, and they're really, really good. And they have spent all of this time with, class after class after class, year after year, contributing more data to this set. And we can also see other places that set has been used and sort of the social prestige of that set. And we can then consider whether or not we want to use that set in our music. So now that we have this music all together, we're going to sell it to a music subscription service called the Music Lovers Club. And the Music Lovers Club buys music from, people who apply whose music they like. They also buy, like we said before, the listening information from their subscribers, what they're liking, how long they're listening to things, all that kind of stuff. And they also buy reviews from subscribers. So reviewing music, starring music is no longer something that you do, just to feed data into a platform. You are compensated for that as part of this relationship. And then they sell listening to the listening subscriptions, which is the main product of the company. But they also sell information from their subscribers. So they sell anonymized data back to bands about what other bands the people who really like their music are listening to. They sell access to those reviews. They sell sort of things that their subscribers have contributed and been compensated for back to people who are interested in that thing. So this is a giant flow diagram of how all these relationships work and how the data lineages work. So, this is our Hillcrest Marimba Band over here, and they have a lineage back to this band's project. All the individual members of the band retain ownership of their property, their data property, and that relationship also includes the payments that go back to them. The listener is selling data, receiving music, and being compensated. There's a missing arrow that should go that way. I just realized. So we're gonna think now about data ownership and remixing, because this is a big thing in music. So this is our remixer. Our remixer is going to go in, find sampleable music, and include both a sample that we haven't seen before, but also a sample of our band. And so here I'm going to talk more about this, the royalty rights for each piece of data in the data lineage. So currently we're imagining there are a few different ways of doing the royalty rights. So this one is for something similar to what Unity does with their seats. If you are licensing this to a membership of maybe 10 or less, there is one lower royalty rate, and if you're licensing it to a corporation or a political campaign or something, there's a different licensing rate here. And then, so that is for this project itself, but then the data lineages also come with these sort of royalty demands. If you're going to use my thing, you have to pay me a certain percentage. And the reason that we're using percentages here is that if you, for example, make very little money off of this project, you are not investing a huge amount of money up front and then getting sort of like having a lot of risk for very little reward. Whereas you're being able to reuse and remix things without there being you're developing a relationship within the system because you can see those lineages without having to have like a high risk financial thing. So this is what happens on the other side of that. When Jones sees a new remix and goes in to see, why can I never get the button to work? Goes in to see sort of the different ways that this project has been remixed. We see it's been used in a movie, it was used by an AI, it was published in an article, it was used in this game, and now it's being used in a new piece of music. And when we see more about Jones's total income from various different kinds of projects, we'll see that this band's album, you can see here, this is what we're talking about with the royalties sort of falling down over time. We can see it's slightly a fantasy to say that we would have all of that information just automatically, like, oh, I can automatically know that when the album was first launched on this platform, that is what that money spike is from, but theoretically you might be able to label it yourself or something, but sorry, that was a side note.
You can do it blockchain probably.
Yeah. So basically showing how different projects add up to different kinds of income. So this orange section is hand tracking app from one of Jones's other projects where he was contributing hand tracking data while playing his saxophone, and that was bought in another thing. And we can just sort of see like how his income adds up and why data lineages are so important and why it's so important for there to be property. Because then everyone gets to have money and there are stars!
All right, our last hypothetical person. Here's where I'm going to remember. I don't know how long this session is going to be. We're going to try not to take it too long so we have time for questions. Okay, last hypothetical person is Spider. She owns and operates a fleet of delivery vehicles. And here we're going to be talking about a MID creator, MID being short for mediator of individual data, which is the name that Jaren uses for, and Glenn used for data union type entities. So Spider got her start as a delivery driver in hazardous conditions in a rural area. And so now she operates a fleet of vehicles and she's facing this false dilemma. The false dilemma is that her employees are worried that they're going to lose their jobs due to AI, self-driving cars, shrinking economy for human drivers, and she's concerned about her employees and also about her company's future. She also is worried about the safety of her drivers since she specializes in snowy, hazardous mountainous conditions, and self-driving cars could be much safer than humans, ideally. But for her niche, that's not happening anytime soon. On roads like this, there's very little, like self-driving cars can't do this. We're a pretty long way away from figuring out when all markers get covered up, fresh snowfall can change the topography. It's a tough problem. This is a real machine learning mistake that is my dog and an algorithm, because of this white featureless background, was not able to tell that these pictures shouldn't get stuck together. And so, right, so it's when you have blind featureless landscapes and road markers and signs get covered up and snow could be interfering with connectivity, all these things make these kinds of conditions very difficult for AI. So data in those conditions is valuable and is going to keep being valuable in this hypothetical future for at least long enough. So Spider creates a MID that's going to collect and sell data from expert drivers who are experts at driving in these kinds of conditions to sell to self-driving car interests so that they can get their cars up to speed on these kinds of conditions. So one hypothetical driver is Slippery Sam, and they got their name doing life-saving deliveries in extremely hazardous conditions in Alaska. And they're one of those people who just intuitively understand everything about how a truck is feeling by the sound and the smell. But they don't want to be a driver forever. They're looking to start a family and spend less time away from home. So they're an employee of Spider's company, contributing driving data to Spider's MID, which is selling it to self-driving car interests, but doing it in a data dignified manner where this expert skill of Sam's can now be captured by computers with this data, sold to AI, but it's still Sam's skill that's being sold, and Sam still deserves to have income from that skill when it's used by self-driving cars for other people's benefit. So we imagine Sam's truck is all covered in all sorts of sensors, and there's different ways to think about trust and risk. This comes also back to your earlier question, where Sam is going to have an income and is going to get paid some percentage of what Spider expects to get from this data from the future self-driving car companies. But it's also going to get paid some percentage of what it actually ends up being worth. And this is because when you invest your data into someone's AI, there's some risk. You took time and energy and maybe paid for gas to gather that data. And so if that company fails, then you don't want to have to pay the risk. So some percentage of that might get paid up front. And we also wanted to imagine an interface involving AR, which is maybe less relevant for this particular presentation, but we have to have AR, because this is what we do. We need to have embodied interfaces where we have all the data streaming and we get to pluck at the different points and stick them together and have this map in front of us with all the little hazard cones from the drivers where they see this road's blocked, this road's open, all this data that humans can get, getting your spreadsheets on and pulling the data out. So, maybe I can see an unusual thread coming in of unusual, if I'm looking at the safety interface, what speeds are people going, and what's the average, and what's the derivative, and plug all the math in with my hands. And maybe Spider sees this unusual payment coming in because some self-driving car company has just used a piece of data from one of Spider's employees that ended up being worth a lot of money. And in this case, it's Slippery Sam, Slippery Sam's data from, sliding and losing control and then recovering on a snowy road ended up getting used to save a self-driving car from going off the road. And when you save a truck from going off the road, we're going to imagine a self-driving truck, so human life isn't even considered here yet. But you save the truck, right? You save the contents of the truck, and now the whole integrity of the supply chain has been maintained because of where all those products had to go that were in the truck. So this is worth a lot. Like, that data is worth a lot, and so Sam deserves a good chunk of that, and to have economic security for them and their family, so that Sam maybe doesn't want to spend as much time on the road anymore and spend time with their kids. So that income adds up, everyone's happy, Spider saves the economy, becomes a billionaire, and so those are our hypothetical people and situations, and we wanted to think of these people and situations just so that we can have more tangible conversations about what some of these ideas might look like in real life and stay a little bit of grounded, even if it's a speculative design future. But now data flows both ways. People can choose to sell to a giant company, they can choose to sell somewhere else. Some people don't want to participate. Some people just want to be left alone and live their lives. And that's also an economic choice, and that's a fine economic choice. So then there's more market and more autonomy, and that is our talk. And thank you. I don't know how long I'm supposed to go.
Till other people fill the hallway and want to come in.
Great. So if there are any questions. Yes?
Have you thought at all about data laundering? Like, I don't know, you train some AI vehicle and then you have some thing which is like a camera which then views that vehicle that's using the data, but there's not really a hard link between the software that's on the vehicle and then this camera that's just observing whatever goes down.
Yeah, that's
the
a
street.
great instance where the law steps in. You cannot build a technological system in which all bad actors are automatically filtered out in advance. So in our current economy, there's plenty of, you know, what we would consider like white collar crime. So there will probably be data collar crime that we have to use, like your data protection agency. Like that's going to be part of like how. And I don't want to push like all responsibility off onto the law and be like, no, judges have to do everything, because they're not. Not all judges are going to be well educated enough about this stuff to make great calls on this. But yeah, like you need laws. We can't solve everything with technology.
Yes.
Would you create a system of bounties to allow for bounty hunters to run?
So Chef Noms essentially has bounties. Like Chef Noms can ask for things, or I'm sorry, Subat.
Subat, right. So that's, I don't know if that's a sense of bounty you need, but like data bounties. Like we need data on avocado toast, or do you mean
Or
on
actually on the infringement side?
on the infringement side? Yeah, possibly. Maybe there's a system. Yeah. Well, right now there are like bug bounties. I don't know if you've heard about
Exactly.
bug. Yeah. So possibly we haven't thought too deeply about that issue, but yeah.
There's a problem with choosing going back to the first example, choosing your supplier is really hard. As in, choosing who's going to buy your data is really hard. The data is basically only worth anything because someone's going to buy it. The problem is, how do you know in advance who'll do that? So if a buyer comes along, so we're trying to architect a system like this, and then you realize actually no one cares about the individual selling their data. It's the buyers who matter in the system because they're the one providing the value. So what do they want? And they want to know that this data set has 1 million people in it, not it has 2 people in it, because then everyone has to sit there permissioning their data. So then it gets really difficult and very complicated. So it turns out that I don't think you can really actually offer that much consumer choice with who buys your data. You could probably start to list categories, but I think it gets quite difficult.
So a great example of that would be like, what mid do we all sell our data to? Like the data of our opinions about this talk. There are 3 mids. One of them never ever sells to Amazon because the people who buy into that mid don't want to. And I'm not using Amazon because I hate them. I buy Amazon. I'm just using them as an example of a company that people hate on. So like the point of mids is not that there will be one mid and it is Facebook and you can either play the game or not, but that there will be lots of them and you can choose based on the amount of money you want to get from it, your moral stance on what your data is worth, like, and then that mid can do the buyer side, because none of us individually want to sell data. Like it would be such a stupid nightmare, and that's what the mids are for. And you get personal choice. Like there has to be consumer choice, otherwise, like I would never participate in a system like this. Like if I have to only sell to one person or one mid, and they can just sell to whoever they want, like I don't want to participate.
Yeah.
In the back.
In the case of Slippery Sam, wouldn't his data, this is maybe just a question, but wouldn't his data on like swerving on the road be just one of 10,000 data points that trains the model that saves that self-driving car? So wouldn't the amount of money that actually goes to Slippery Sam in that example be fractions of a penny?
It depends on how you're distributing the data. So if we imagine that we're going to be able to use some future technology, maybe involving blockchain or something, to be able to find in the model what part of the model, what training data was essential to make that correct decision. We believe that there are techniques for this, whether they'll be inexpensive enough to run that kind of thing and like run what would the AI have done without Slippery Sam's data. We're imagining that it has that counterfactual to decide that it was Slippery Sam's data that made the deciding factor. But yeah, we don't have all the technological details, and that's what we hope to start to talk about.
Yeah, like inference reversibility is a great example of a technology you could use to prove that like this section really needed that data to be able to do that action.
Right. Assuming that you could do that cheaply enough.
Yeah, that's currently the problem, is like doing this would take all the computers.
So there probably have to be some.
Just all of them. No more blockchain,
We'll have
just this.
quantum computing to solve it all. Don't worry.
Yeah. Karen and Lyle.
How do you handle liability with this? I'm thinking, for example, if we're speculating in the future, maybe we're thinking of a car-free environment in which there are fines on driving. And now you've given your data to driving. How do you handle that data may directly be fined, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I'm only going to be thinking out loud on this. This isn't something but yeah, things like that. In some ways, we think some of it would be negotiated by the mid. Like, are you selling data as is, or are you making some guarantee that this data is correct? In some cases, if you have a bad actor, for example, who's saying this is the best data I know how. There are laws in place, maybe Good Samaritan laws sometimes apply for certain cases that you might be thinking of, but that's definitely a big thing that the law would have to figure out and that companies would have to negotiate.
Hi. Super interesting, thank you for sharing. I have one issue that I keep grappling with and hoping you can help me reconcile, and that is that right now a lot of AI is recommendation systems, and the data that it's processing is about people's preferences often for products. Given current inequities, does this potentially set up a scenario in which the data of wealthy people is worth more than that of lower income people because they can be sold to more expensive products? Their preferences are more valuable. I'm wondering if you grapple with that at all yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern that is super true and super valid. And it's true. Wealthy people often want to buy wealthy people data and wealthy people things. So if you have any ideas about that, or if anyone else does, that would be.
No ideas.
Have you considered some strange second order effects that can come out of this? For example, right now we're in a data scarce situation. Right? Let's say it becomes there's now an abundance of data. Right now, all of a sudden, maybe the incentives are different, and people may not want to participate. Or that, let's suppose that certain types of data are just fundamentally more valuable than other types of data. Would that lead to certain data farms where people who are able to basically almost monopolize that type of data, just like patent trolls might just preemptively file a bunch of patents? You can see people potentially doing things like that. Those are just two examples. I'm curious how you think about potential second order effects of creating this marketplace of data.
Yeah, it's a good question. And one of the reasons we made these scenarios is so that we can start to think of scenarios like that in a more concrete way. Like, this talk is about, this is exactly what we should do and let's do it, yay, forever. It's about, once we have more concrete examples, maybe we can start to finesse out some of the consequences. So the short answer is that I don't know yet, although currently, yeah, there are data workers who do spend, they make their sole most income doing what some people call click work.
Right.
And mostly, a lot in India, and these people are often kind of exploited, but then it's a very tricky question to
Yeah,
grapple
there's a
with.
great second order effect that we're currently getting is we need content moderation. Content moderation means people are looking at horrible shit all day.
Yep.
And then they get paid very little and have no mental health care, and then they just assume that all the bad things in the world that are true, because that's what you look at all day. So that's a great example of a second order effect that we currently have completely not solved.
Yeah, so get back.
Yeah, sorry,
Get back to the previous question of the rich people can sell data for money, but wouldn't poor people, they will win by volume? There'll be more demand of the poor people data because there'll be more people who are poor, and so that there will be more demand, so that the price will be relatively higher. It won't be less, though, as you probably think. It will be higher because there'll be more demand.
But I guess his point is that I want to know what other people like me watch on Netflix, and so Netflix will pay people who are in my income bracket more money because they can charge me more money for being in that income bracket to get that data, or maybe it's not just income bracket, maybe it's a more intersectional thing where
If I want to know about avocado toast, that's kind of rich.
it's of course we use that example. Are you looking at us? More people in the back. Just someone decide who's going first.
I just want to answer that because from what I understand, things like platforms like Facebook will pay more for data. They're more interested in data from people who have a lot of influence already, or which are.
Oh, interesting. So it's attention, rich in attention of other people.
Right.
Influencers, I guess, is the word that we're supposed to use for that.
Exactly.
Their data is worth more because they have more attention.
Interesting.
Yes.
But don't we already live in a world where people's data is valued differently? If we go back to the world of advertising for a letter from, let's say, Axios versus your local newspaper, the brands you'll see in the actual ad will be wildly different.
Yeah.
Let's say securities to just like payday loans.
Right.
Yeah, we're hoping standards are so low right now that it's not too hard to come up with a better system. But yeah.
I wanted to, because you mentioned briefly that you would ideally want to pay someone for the marginal product of their individual data. That seems really computationally complex for that to be done. But we have like a lot of like mechanisms that exist for the average product of data. And if you go to places, some of them already exist, right? In China, you have a lot of data factories that like hand labeling the data they're using to train stuff, and they're paying people for that. What's the kind of barrier you see to implementing your type of work, and why isn't that version of it more common? What do you idealize the difference that needs to happen?
Well, a lot of it's just cultural. People are used to their data being taken for free. People don't realize that when they're doing the CAPTCHAs, like a lot of people here maybe realize that you're working for Google, but most people aren't thinking about that, and they just don't know. I watched all of the Facebook hearings in Congress, and it's clear that lawmakers and their constituents don't understand how this system works. So yeah, once people demand to get paid for their work, that's the biggest difference.
And the part is that like you're being given something for free. I'm going to now give up the thing I've had for free for a long time. Feels like that's like a hard thing to do. I mean, this might sound extreme, but I kind of compare it to breaking with white solidarity. The part where you like have to step away from white solidarity and like shiver in the cold by yourself while that you feel it feels like a thing. It feels like a really hard social thing. So to break people out of something that, and data is not just like, you know, me messing around on my phone. Data is all of my friends, and data is my family, and data is like all the books I read on Overdrive. Like data is a lot of social stuff that we have to change, and it is gonna hurt.
So with that cultural change, just a quick follow-up. Is there any kind of like legislative change you think is necessary, or is this just ground level advocacy you think can accomplish this in the long run?
Both, but in California, again, we're trying. Governor just announced data dividends. So yeah, they're looking at how to maybe implement something like this, and also so we work with Microsoft, and they are also starting to look at ways to implement this so that workers who are already working to make data for these companies, or for example, Bing search engine, like there are all these places data are getting collected, and to make sure the people doing that collecting are going to get something in return over longer term. And if that starts with just divvying it up in like a 1/n kind of model, like that's a place to start. And maybe doing all the actual specific algorithmy bits is too hard, but maybe there's something in the middle where that does incentivize people making better contributions and making better data and not trying to defraud whatever data agency they're working for. So that's the hope.
What's happening in Europe, in fact, I read in The Economist yesterday that they were thinking about paying for data in Europe. Do you know what's going on there?
It's similar to the California's data dignity. They do not have a like concrete system, but they're trying to look to a way for companies to have to pay back the people who data into their systems.
3 things. This is cool. Thank you. The idea that giving up free emails, like giving up white solidarity, run with that. That's hilarious. Very real. Too real, I suspect, for many. That's why you need to do it. And then the third is, seems focused, I came in partway, on individual remuneration. And have you thought about a collective pot? One might call it like a fund or taxes. Essentially, like we need money for stuff as a city, as a nation, as a species, and there's a lot of value, but it's accruing to these like handful of platforms. And maybe the in-between step is less about the technical capacity, but who is on the other end of that payment. And it's a collective version of us rather than individual.
Yes.
And that simplifies the end in the 1/n.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be happy to contribute some of my data if it meant that I could pour it into the San Francisco's BART is not horrible all the time problem. Like,
and you could also actually very quickly go create national legislation, if you mentioned taxes.
It's a crazy idea.
I live in Washington DC, so.
Yeah, hopefully now that there's some conversations happening with actual legislative bodies around this stuff, maybe they will have good ideas about that.
And I just want to add something about it. So I'm from Paris, and with my mother, who's a nanny, we built a community of nannies. And what is quite impressive is that they don't have the digital tools, so they are not on the platforms like Uber-like platform for nannies, you know. So what we try to do is to collect the data so that they can access to job, because we use the data, but we want to control it so that the money can come inside the community and we can help them and secure them. But we don't know really where to start with the tools, so we do it like really manually. So I have calls and we use platforms and we organize like that. But we need to have some maybe systems to do it. So
and what data are you collecting?
Sorry?
What data are you collecting?
If they are available to work, where they are living, what are their like skills, all those things. You know? And platforms are like very, they really want those data because they have data for babysitters, because they are young people, like millennials, but not for those traditional nannies.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great example of where like a common interest in community exists.
And then you could make a mid, make it all put the data in the mid.
And then save the economy.
Yeah, thanks for the awesome examples. I think these are really exciting. Like, I think one thing I struggle with a lot, and I was thinking this as I was reading Going to the Future, is like how we get, struggling to see how we get there from where we are today, given the current status of like the monopolies and the siren servers and stuff. So I guess my question is kind of like, to what extent do you think our existing like applications and services and like networks, social networks, whatever, can be like evolved or like retrofitted to move us in this direction versus needing to like build entirely new products and services?
I don't think you can retrofit social media to do this. Like,
so where do we start, I guess, is the next question.
I work for Microsoft, so I'm going to say a Microsoft thing, which is that we build a platform on Azure. And it's a giant cloud, and like, I mean, that's not like a real thing that we're doing, like our team is doing.
From like a product perspective, you have to give people products they care about, right?
There are data dignity teams at Microsoft building products in.
Yeah, there's a brand new data dignity team right now just getting started. If they're hiring. So we do have to wrap up, but one more question.
Well, I was going to respond to Lane by saying this, which is that, so we're, again, just struggling with this, like, how do you architect a system where you want Web 2 data to go into a Web 3 world? And the answer is, well, some of the answers are with software at least, because there's also hardware issues with IoT, but and that world. But with the software end, the OAuth system is really good, which is why it's really important to have a sort of, where the legal aspect comes in is where you say consumers should have a right to their API access. And that's the little legal key, because if they don't, then Spotify or whomever, like Facebook, can just shut down your individual access to your data feed. And then third party like builders or the Web3 ecosystem just dies without that flow of data coming from Web 2. That's our response anyway.
Yeah. It's definitely super complex.
Well, we're doing it, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's starting to work.
Yeah, it's weird that like things happen, and another thing I like to keep in mind is like unions happen somehow, workers' rights happen, like how? It's impossible. Like change is impossible, and yet people do it all the time historically, so.
Yeah.